Craig up and going as soon as I remember the command for it. Join. I don't know why join never sticks in my memory.
Now recording.
There we go.
Yeah, and then remind myself again how to turn it off so I don't have to see his screen. There we go. All right. Everybody good? 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome back, dear listeners and viewers, if you're on YouTube. This is episode, at this point, I think 21, probably, when it's going to be released for Will and Jerod Make a Game. So we've actually landed quite a few of these so far. We just wrapped up the playtesting sessions that Jerod was running, and we are eager to get back to interviews with some other folks kind of in the indie ttrpg space, and pick their brains a bit for what's going on, what all they are seeing as the secret to success here, and maybe spread some of that knowledge. So I'm Will, of course. My co-host here is...
Hey, I'm Jerod. Yep, I'm just excited to be here because I think we've got someone on here that, uh, like RP, has found an interesting niche to explore in. However, unlike RP, has a much broader control, or totalitarian control of their product, I guess is the way I want to say it. And yeah, we just want to welcome Cassi Mothwin.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. I am a little bummed. I think you had a project crowdfunding, I think maybe right now, or did it just
It
end?
just ended last Friday. Thank goodness.
It's a good feeling, but I'm sad schedule wise that we're a little bit late in helping get that.
Oh, it's okay. Pre-orders are open.
Okay, well, good. So what was that project?
So that project was Tangled Blessings, Echoes of Lost Electives, which is a printed expansion to my base game that already existed that I'd crowdfunded last year called just Tangled Blessings, which is a mouthful to explain a magical horror, a Magic Academy horror role-playing game for that's GM-less for 1 to 2 players, and it is tarot driven. So that's the elevator pitch. It's a very long one. I've been told many times it's a mouthful, so that's that piece. I've also been told when I released it, a lot of the feedback was, listen, great game, we love it. The issue is there's not enough content. And when I first crowdfunded it, I stupidly, after I immediately hit my goal within, I think it was 15 minutes, I decided to add stretch goals, and those stretch goals were a lot more content. And I wanted to put those in print. So the crowdfunding campaign was to put the stretch goals from the previous campaign into print because the stretch goals were just for digital copies. So yay, I'm excited that now that critique of more content won't necessarily exist because it will be there. You can have all the content.
Awesome. I'm glad it's doing so well.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. It's always a journey, and even though I knew it had built up an audience, especially at its initial crowdfunding and then through release and then through the year of me documenting, creating more content, it was building up an audience. So I knew it was there, but the economy's been weird since last year, so I wasn't sure how well it would do. And I'm very pleased. I think it surpassed the original crowdfunding goal, the original's crowdfunding total by about $100. So it's nice that
Okay.
it didn't suffer too much. So
Well, good.
That's
Good.
a great feeling in 15
Yeah.
minutes. Like, because there's always, like, I don't care who you are. As far as the people that I've met, there's this total feeling of like being a fraud, right?
Yeah.
And then like you put something together that you love, and you just kind of kick it out the door, and you're just like, well, this is probably where they tell me that it's awful, you know?
Yeah.
If
I
they
don't
tell you
relate.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 100%. I took me I do a lot of I do all the cover art for my projects. I don't know if you all realize that. So I'm the artist for all of my projects. I do use some public domain art, and then I have enlisted some guest artists for a couple of spot pieces, but like all the cover art's me. So it took me a long time to even get to the point where I could comfortably call myself an artist, and that was because my fans were bullying me into calling myself an artist. They were like, "You are an artist." And I was like, "But not really." Because artists are good at what they do, and clearly I'm not.
That is 100% one of the things I want to jump into it, because taking a look at your product, I just flipped it up so people can see a little bit of it. I specifically picked out um, the carved by the garden,
That is all
um,
me. That's
and
all my
just like
artwork.
showing that on the
Mhm.
screen so people can take a look at that. Now, how like I can't conceive of it because I love the idea. I'm only just now doing public art in mixing it together to try and get something that works, that looks cool. Did you know, like, did you have that in your back pocket already that you were going to do the art for all of your stuff? And how long does it take once you decide that you're going to do the art for your projects?
So to answer that question, we have to backtrack to my very first project. And my first project I was doing was for D&D 5e. It was like a folk horror encounters, and I was writing quite a bit of content, and I was started to follow a bunch of people on Twitter. I was planned on releasing it for free, and I did. It's now a charged product, but originally it was for free. And I was just meeting people, and I thought everybody was doing their own art. So I didn't realize we were all out here, that everyone else was hiring people, or they were using public domain work, or they were partnering with someone and sharing whatever money they raised, or profit sharing, for example. I literally thought everyone was doing their own art. So I was like, well, I guess I have to do my own art. And I had, thank you stimulus package, had purchased an iPad, an iPad pencil, a year prior. So I was like, I don't know, I minored in art in college. I could come up with something. So that was it was an accident. I just thought everyone was doing it. I thought it was the indie thing people did. And to be fair to me, there are quite a few people who do all of their art, their cover art, and their writing. So I had practice when Carved by the Garden came up. I had already done all of the art for What Crooked Roots and Clean Spirit and some of Tangled Blessings. So Carved by the Garden, I had quite a bit of practice at that point. I had quite a bit of understanding of what layout is, how much text is going to be in it, exactly where I'm going to need spot art probably. So it's for me, I like doing my own art because I can look at the book and say, oh, well, I know I'm going to need a hard break here, and it'll be really nice to have art here. So I'm like my own art director. I do suffer though because I don't work with an artist. I move a lot slower. And you did ask, like, I think you asked, like, how long does it take? It takes
Yeah.
a long time, and I have to figure out how to balance that, because there will be days where it's like I want to do art today, but I can't. I have to get copy written for this section because it has to go to my proofer, because if it doesn't go to my proofer, it's going to be delayed another week, and I already told people this is going to be released by this date. So it is a lot of discipline at the end of the day.
What do you do to use to keep that up? So if you're doing the art, it sounds like you're doing the layout too.
Yes,
Are you doing Affinity or
I use Affinity. Yep.
Affinity? Um, do you use a program to help you organize all this, or what's your method for that? This for people that like are doing it all. Like Will and I had an
Hmm.
episode where we talked about all the different hats that we wear, and that's between two people, and we don't do the art for the most part,
Yeah,
right? We're just
yeah.
now getting to the idea of being able to pull and make stuff from public art stuff. So, how do you organize that? And would you recommend that to other people?
I think if you have the money, the time, and the interest, doing your own art is a great way to explore a project. I think if you want to make money, you have to be honest about your skill level. You have to be honest with yourself about your skill level. I think I'm pretty mediocre at art, if I'm being completely honest. Am I above the average person who's never picked up a pencil? Yeah, duh. But am I like D&D levels? Never, nowhere close. And there are artists in the tabletop RPG space where I think if I hired them to do my cover art and my interior art, my stuff would move better, to be completely honest with you. So I think that's a choice you have to make. I, quite frankly, just don't make enough money to invest in other artists, where I would feel like I would need the money I would need to pay for a skill level higher than mine is a lot. So for me, it's like, well, I can spend that money in other ways that makes more sense for my business, because that's what we're doing. At the end of the day, I'm running a business. Like, I have an LLC. I hate that, like, now I'm part of the capitalist machine, but that's where we're at. At some point you get to that stage, hopefully, if you're working really hard. So you have to, like, kind of make that decision yourself. Like, where do I have the skill set to do it, and do I not? From an organization standpoint, quite honestly, I'm still figuring that out. I have like 3 cloud services that I use. I have iCloud, I have Google Drive, and then I have my actual hard drive that I had to upgrade. And naming is in your folder system. Like, I figure that shit out. Sorry, can we curse stuff?
I think PG-13-ish level is totally fine.
I always mark it not for kids, so we're okay.
Yeah.
Great. Figure that shit out early. Figure out your folder structure and your naming process as soon as possible. One of the biggest things that helps me when I am naming, like when I think it's going to be a final, is actually I do the year, month, date at the front of the file. So your 2024 09/26 would be like today's file type. And then instead of it organizing your file, you can organize your files by name, and if you open it up later, it doesn't mess up date modified, so you're not going to be confused about when did I open this, because I like to keep iterations in case, I don't know, this is my big hot tip. All these programs mess up at some point, and you're going to be like, wait a minute, where did this section go that was deleted? It was in version blah blah blah, and now you can go back and open version blah 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 and copy and paste what was there and somehow got deleted at some point and move it back. That has happened to me a couple of times in Affinity. So I say save iterations, make sure you have backups of your backups, and pray to whatever god or entity you believe in.
I've got to just give you huge props for your naming scheme and sticking to that.
Dude, I don't stick to it, but I give it as advice, of course.
Yeah, well, I know it's so common, and I used to be terribly guilty of it too. To be naming docs, I don't know, something random. Ideas number 1, ideas 2. Ideas 2 final, ideas 2 no, really it's final this time. And it's just, oh wow. So I at least have taken to software versioning it, so everything gets like an O.1, O.2.
See, I got to the point where I would get to 1.0 and I was like, it's good, and then oh no, I actually it needs quite a few edits. It's still not at 1.0, but I'm out of decimal points.
Well, you give yourself a little grace and say, okay, it's fine for this to be 1.1.
No, grace. It must be perfect. What are we?
Like, to kind of let people know, like, who we're talking to, is that, so I read your bio. You haven't been doing this for very long.
No.
And to look at your accomplishments already, I'm just going to read this list here.
I'll listen.
Because, like, you mentioned that little thing you did for 5e, the gold award or the gold selling on Drivethru. Yeah, it seems pretty
gold
good.
Bestseller.
You've got gold, you've got a bronze on there, I'm pretty sure too, for
I've
something
got
else.
2 coppers.
Copper.
It just went silver. So I've got 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 copper bestseller on Drivethru RPG. That's fine.
Nice.
And you have been mentioned or interviewed with or whatever with Dicebreaker, Gizmodo, Polygon, Ars Technica, in some magazine named Forbes that apparently is a thing.
Yeah, apparently.
Wow. Can I know this is such a large thing,
right?
And I know I've been hogging the questions here, but those are the big ones. I've got just 2 left, but like your ability to Saturated market isn't the right word, but to be able to reach out, get the connections in an area that, like I kind of talked a little bit about, of singular or duo adventuring. Like I think that's really
Yeah.
blowing up right now and it's getting more accepted, more interesting. But you had to start somewhere to get
Hmm.
all this exposure. How in the world were you able to do that in such a short amount of time? It's amazing.
Thank
Great
you.
job, man.
I credit it to, and anyone listening, if you disagree with this, please feel free. I'm open to feedback. I believe it is because I was very helpful to a lot of people, and honestly, they paid me back in recommending me, in remembering how helpful I was. If someone asks me for advice and I have time, I don't these days, but there was a time when I had a lot more open time, and I would get on calls with people and we would sit for hours and just talk about how do we think we can make this game better? How can we market it better? What are some ways I can network? How can we talk to other people? Like, what are some, like, that's literally what I did for like a year. And it wasn't from a strategy of I want to grow my network and I want to be known. It was never anything like that. It really was genuinely I wanted to learn the gaming industry. I wanted to meet people. I mean, coming off the pandemic, I felt pretty isolated. I honestly don't have that many friends like in person. I'm trying to get out of my bubble. So it was great for me to actually have friends and relationships that weren't kind of off topic, but I am a leftist. And most of my life, I have lived in a very, very conservative town. And so I did not feel like I could be myself. I did not feel like I was never comfortable. I couldn't form relationships where I was very close with people. So when I kind of entered the tabletop RPG space and I was surrounded by people who had similar thoughts, ethos, philosophies as me, it was such a breath of fresh air that I just wanted to talk. I'd be like, let's hop on a call. Let's figure this problem out that you're struggling with. And so I met people in Europe that I still am like great friends with today. And like I went to Gen Con and I was able to have dinner with them for, the first time. And so they would recommend me, someone would ask them like, do you know somebody who can do this? And they were like, oh, my friend Cassie sat with me on a call and talked me through it. And so then referral. And I didn't charge for this most of the time. Sometimes I did because my professional day job was in marketing. So there were some times when I would have to be like, all right, I feel like this is getting to the territory of like, we need to talk about some type of price plan. But in other instances, it was more like, let's just have a friendly conversation and see what happens. So that's where I know it looks like I kind of came out of nowhere, and I did. But at the same time, I was like making friends. And I know there's a lot of talk about parasocial relationships, and I know that can be dangerous, but I truly believe I was making real friendships, and I will hold and cherish many of the early people I met when I first started. I think we are truly friends.
It's
If
I hope
amazing.
that
if
helps.
Yeah. Uh, it very much parallels what RP said too. Like it's just helping each other. Um,
Exactly.
Oh yeah, yeah. That seems to be a recurring theme. If only introverted me could figure that out a little bit better.
I'm also introverted. It was a challenge to myself. And I should credit a couple people, and I always do. When I first got on Twitter, I barely talked to anybody. I was the liker. Like, people would go into my likes and see I had like 2 million likes, because that's what I was just like, cool, I agree. I agree. I agree. And then my friend Paul, who's like one of my dearest friends now, and honestly, if someone did this to me now, I'd be really irritated, but it was okay. It's okay. I forgive Paul if he's listening. He made a tweet where he's like, I love my follower at Cassi Mothwin. She likes everything I tweet. I wish more of my followers would be like Cassi Mothwin. And that like
Nice.
I was seen, right? I was perceived at that point. And I was valuing some of the content that Paul was tweeting about, some game design stuff he was doing, some actual graphic design stuff he was doing. And I was like, wow, if someone sees me. And he's like, yeah, of course we see you. Hi, how are you? Let's get to know each other. So we like chatted on Twitter on the timeline, which I don't think that's healthy now. The Twitter timeline is awful, but like Threads and Blue Sky are a little bit better for that. And now like I think we're friends for life. Like he's driven down to St. Louis and we've gone to conferences together. We meet up when we go to other conventions together. He's a great pal. Him, I and his partner, like we're super close. And I like just to tell you, like, even though you're an introvert, like, keep trying. Like, you got me on. Like, I was never at a stage where I felt confident being like, come talk to me. It was more like I don't know. I never cold called anybody. So that's a big kudos. Like, give yourself some credit.
Well, thank you, and hopefully, we'll keep doing this and keep getting some more positive responses. You've already been a pleasure to talk to,
Oh, thanks.
so I'm glad this has been going really well. I know I've got a few random questions bouncing around in my head, but I know Jerod had a more organized plan, and I know he was getting close to the end of that list. I don't want to jump in and derail it if you've got something that you're aiming for, Jerod.
Oh, no, not at all. I was just going off of what she was saying. They've just kind of dovetailed into some of the things that I was interested in because like you talk about being an introvert and yet you've got YouTube, you have a TikTok channel, you have
Yeah,
Instagram. Like those are your social media presence is very broad, but at the same time, I noticed that you're not doing it. I mean, I guess I'm not on Instagram, so I don't know about that one as much. But
I
like
don't
your
either.
website, which is gorgeous,
Thank
like
you. I built it myself.
it's awesome.
nice.
It's another
Uh,
hat.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it totally
yeah,
is. Um, but like your posting of stuff, it's not every week. It's
No.
not even necessarily every month, but it seems like something every couple months, something will get updated. Usually, like probably on a project you're working on to highlight it and get it on there. Of all the social media that you're working on, like is this stuff, do you find the value in this stuff? Because I know we talked about it a little bit before you got on, where I was talking like Blue Sky, Mastodon, Facebook, YouTube. Those are the four things that I'm doing for like marketing, I guess. And I can only honestly say, I guess in Discord too, I can only honestly say that Blue Sky right now has been my biggest callback only because I've joined another Discord group called Rising Tides. Like
Oh,
honestly,
Rising Tide. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
how has it worked for you? How is it like is Instagram worth it? What are your opinions about that?
This is a great question. I'm going to preface it with telling you I wish I could say I had a master plan. The truth is, I have ADHD. So when you were saying sometimes things are updated, sometimes things go months without updating. Depends where I am in that cycle, to be completely honest with you. So just don't try to like match my cadence because I can't even match my cadence. Um, so how do they work for me? I think TikTok is a lost cause for me. I don't think I have the presence, the energy, the timing, or the energy to game that algorithm. That said, I'm not going to quit posting there. I think I'm gonna quit trying so hard, and I think if you went through my TikTok, you probably noticed that like my stuff stopped being super polished. Maybe it was more conversational, sillier. At the end of the day, love talking about games, and that's what drives my social media quote unquote strategy. I have to talk about my products in order to sell them and so people know about them. But I'm just an enthusiast. I love games. So I keep those profiles active with talking about my first love, which is other people's stuff. So, and that's not even really a strategy. That's just like, I like this, and none of my friends have read it, and I want other people to read it so someone will talk to me about it. So I'm going to go talk about it on every profile I own. And if the video can be posted on every social media, I mean, I worked like what, probably an average of 4 hours per little 2-minute video. I'm gonna post it everywhere because I have the profile, and it takes maybe 5 minutes per profile to post it. So might as well at the end of the day, if you're posting on one, if you have all the accounts, post them on the other. Where do I see the most success? It's really hard to say. It shifts, it ebbs and flows depending on the algorithm and who's where, what I post. And that's why I kind of shotgun it. Because something that does really well on Twitter might do awful on X, or not X, on Threads or Blue Sky. I had one post that did awful on several platforms, but it blew up on Tumblr. So it's like, you never know. You never know. And it's about I mean, it's kind of like the market when you're buying a house. You can't time the market. You can do as much research as you want, but right now I think everything is so in flux. I think everyone, the timing on when they're on platforms is changing because people are going back into the office. They're not at home as much. They're not scrolling during their off time as much. So it used to be like 9 a.m. on a Tuesday was the best time to be anywhere. And quite honestly, I still think that's true. I'm still seeing like 9 a.m. Central Time Tuesday is like my good time to post stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's if I post all of my best stuff on Tuesday at 9 a.m. But that said, on Tumblr, I posted something at like 5 o'clock, and that's when it blew up. So it's hard to say for sure. And I stick with everything because there will always be someone who's like, I saw your post on Instagram. And I was like, I didn't know anybody saw my stuff on Instagram. I was literally about to give up on Instagram. Or I saw your how to play video on YouTube. It just popped up on my feed, and I watched it, and I bought your game, and I was like, I didn't even know anybody watched my YouTube. So it's getting a little feedback like that, like literally little anecdotes where it's like, well, that literally led to a direct sale. So I've got to continue to add to that and plug to that if I have the energy. One thing that has changed since I've started is in May of this year, I completely day job career pivoted to a completely new industry, new job, new thing, and I'm in the office 4 days a week, whereas before I was work from home. And now I have to drive, and I've got to come back home, and I'm tired. It's a very, I work customer service now, so I'm very social all day. As an introvert, that's exhausting. So we're seeing those challenges appear in my social media, right? Like I'm not posting as much. And I just try to keep it alive as I can. But yeah.
Yeah, let's give it up for all the people that worked in service, like anything. I did that for a decade as well for insurance. And yeah, I hated it at the end of the day. I needed a good like 45 minutes just to shut
I
down.
love it, quite honestly, but I like having work to do. Honestly, at my last job, I didn't have much to do, which is why tabletop RPG stuff kind of erupted. But I
I've
like
been there.
feeling productive, so I like having things to do, but I wish I did have a little bit more energy for things now, but that's okay. Ebb and flow, as we said.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, that already hit one of the things I was wondering about your current employment, since you had mentioned marketing in the past. I was going to ask if you had just moved on to something new in the real world, so to
Yeah.
speak, or if you were managing to do this full time. So I think that's been answered. But is that something that you would want to achieve?
I thought about it. Here is the thing. I have a lot of student loan debt. So unfortunately, going full time into tabletop RPGs is not for me at this stage. Maybe in like 20, 30 years, we'll see where the market is. But I used to work in here too. I live and work in a 1-bedroom apartment. I want to get a house someday, like with at least one extra room, right? And I would like to pay down that debt. So unfortunately, the dream is out of reach for now, but maybe someday.
Well, that seems to be the hardest part is, well, making money, right? That's kind of where
Yeah.
it ends up. It's just, if I could hang out and just talk about game theory and just game mechanics and the settings and whatever all day long, like, yeah, I would jump in at a heartbeat. But I love one of the things that you're doing on your website for monetization. I don't think it's necessarily driven by that on your website, but you have merchandise.
Oh yeah.
And I want everyone to go to your website right now. The name pops up. I do this, Cassi Mothwin, and check out the
Gosh,
merch.
that's what I get
Uh,
for normally just looking at your itch page. Maybe I should go look at your actual website.
they have
It's there's too much of it. I need to clear it out.
shirts. They have shirts. Well,
I do.
we were
I
just
mean,
talking
I
about that
always
our
need
last
more nerdy
episode.
shirts. I try to always have one on when we record.
I do like your current shirt. I love the what's their name? I know who you bought it
Um,
from.
Plus one
Yes, Plus
EXP.
One EXP. I'm a friend of
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah,
They're one of the folks
they're
I'll sit on the
awesome.
phone with for hours.
Oh, Zine Fiend. Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, so I set up my shop
Jack of all
earlier.
games, master of none. Okay,
Yeah.
I got to stop and pay attention in the interview, or I'm just going to randomly read all of your shirt slogans out loud. Sorry.
You're good. So earlier this year, I set up my shop for the first time, and I realized I could do print. All of that's print on demand. Like I already said, I live in a one-bedroom apartment, so I definitely don't have room for stock on hand. But I was like, oh, I've always wanted to do shirts and hats, so I went a little overboard. So there's a lot I don't
But it,
necessarily need, but I make literally no money on that stuff. I will say that.
but
I'll make
it,
like $1.
Yeah.
it also, how much work is it on your end? If so, you got to do the design, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
to get it within the specs of whatever is going on to the thing. But
Yeah.
then the rest of it is done by a third party, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is
Drop
there
shipping,
anyone?
probably Printful or something.
Printful's one of them. There's a few. I have a few manufacturers plugged in. Yes.
Nice. Ah, ah. So, like I said, I didn't think that it was something that you were banking on making a ton
No.
of money, but it was just something
No.
that was really cool. And for the, was there a special program that you had to download? Did that cost a bunch of money? Because like on
No.
my, like I
It
have the
was free.
website and it just popped up like, oh, hey, look, you can put a shop on now for free, which before it was like $150 or something like that.
Yeah, so my base website, CassieMothwin.com, is WordPress. That's held together. We talked a little bit before the show about duct tape and rubber bands. It's held together by duct tape and rubber bands. Don't dig too deep, please. Um, and I could have like worked through WooCommerce to like get a shop added onto it, but I was like, my shop is already, or my website, the base website is already like at my capacity. I don't want to manage payment processors, or I don't want to figure that out if something breaks. And then Elliot Davis, who you should also reach out to, great person.
Okay.
Elliot Davis also has a Kickstarter coming up soon. He released it's Project Echo, which is a solo tabletop role playing game that uses a planner, so it's really cool, and a few other projects. But I was talking to him at PAX Unplugged last year, and I noticed he had a site, and I was like, that's really cool. I wish I had the energy time to build one. He's like, oh, just use fourthwall.com, which is what I use, peek behind the curtain. And it was easy. It was free. They take a percentage off the top of each sale. And the reason I wanted a store was because I want to direct to consumer my tabletop RPG. So if you buy a tabletop RPG, that does come from my house. Like I write you a little handwritten card. I put some stickers in the envelope. And yeah, and sometimes I'll send you a little thank you video. So I really like it. And then they also have options for third party merchandise. So if you want to make shirts, like you can add those on. The shirts don't come from my house, but like any physical RPGs, they do.
Nice. So now you've got me thinking, because at one point I was going to ask. I mean, I think part of our goal in bringing you on was to talk about, as we've referenced, the many hats that somebody might wear, kind of in this industry or this intersection of industries. And as this conversation goes, the number of hats that you have stacked on top of your head, you're like a honey heist bear, just
Yes.
gaining more and more hats. And like we've got artist and game designer, writer. We've got what web developer at this point. We've got what video producer, social media manager, effectively. I'm probably forgetting some at this point. Are there some other hats that you have felt beneficial to your business and your growth that we didn't list on those fingers?
The big one I need to invest more time into is bookkeeping or admin. I'm not great at responding to email, and it's because I respond to email all day. So I get home and I'm like, no more emails today, no more messages. But like I mean I need to do it. I've thought about hiring a virtual assistant, but it's like I'm also like maybe I'm just at my limit, and I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with not responding to every message right away and maybe being late on things. At the end of the day, it's tabletop RPGs. No one's going to die if I don't respond to an email for a few days.
No. And if they do, that's a weird
That's a
situation,
weird.
man.
They rolled
Yeah.
so many negatives on their
That,
attributes. It's
that
on
game
them
of
at
10
that point.
candles got real.
Yes. The Jenga tower fell over. I had
Yeah,
nothing to do
yeah.
with it.
Well,
Man.
oh, I was
No,
about to
it's
bounce sideways, I'm sure, Jared.
go for it. No, go
Okay.
for it.
Well, Jenga towers made me think of something else that I was
Mhm.
mulling over. Jenga towers, of course, I think a good chunk of people know utilized in Dread. Also, in one of my personal favorite systems, Wretched and Alone, which is a solo system, and I personally love both playing and designing solo stuff, and am
Yay.
super excited. I need to pick up Tangled Blessings because
Park by the
it
Garden is
checks
the
so
Wretched.
many.
It uses the
Oh, it
Wretched
is?
and Alone system. Yep.
Ah, perfect. But the Tangled Blessings just checks so many boxes for me.
That's pretty
Solo
cool.
possible and horror and kind of a the magic school dark academia type thing. Just awesome. So I'm curious then, what kind of pulled you into solo or possibly duo games like this, designing, playing? How'd you wind up there?
Yeah, so I am a forever game master. I feel like a lot of us in the design space tend to be. And I wanted to friggin' play. So it's like, oh, a solo game that I don't have to beg someone else to run for me. Let me try that. And I tried my first game, which was called The Sealed Library by Matt Sanders of The Sealed Library. It's also a Wretched and Alone game, and I've said many times it unlocked my brain to what tabletop RPGs could be. I mentioned that I minored in art. I have a master's in English, so I'm a bit of a writer. So
Nice.
I was like, holy cow, this is a really cool way to flex my creative muscle. This is a cool way to explore different systems. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole of solo games not last year, the year before, 2022. It was big solo game exploration. I read and played as many as I could get my hands on, and it was just like I was like, this is what I want to do. This is for me. And there is not a huge audience for solo games. It's growing every day, but there's a lot of people who don't even know what solo games are. Uh, you try to explain it to them, and they'll say, "Oh, choose your own adventure books." And it's like, kind of. That's a gateway in, yes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I started at, like, I sell at art shows every once in a while, because I do my own art, so I can bring my books in and be like, this is a game, and they're like, what? How does that work? So like that's kind of the way in. They might have never encountered RPGs or might be vaguely aware of D&D, but not know exactly how it works. The duo piece comes from I want to play games with my spouse. Sometimes it's only me and him at the table, and we both love RPGs. We both want to play, but neither one of us want to leave and go prep a campaign for a couple hours each week, or even just an hour. Like, we want to hang out, we want to collaborate, we want to work together. So I was like, I want there to be more games for us. I want there to be more GM-less options out there. So I'm more interested in exploring GM-less and duo games. I obviously solo games are always there for me as well, but that's kind of the space that I just want to see growth in overall. So it's like it's one of those fine, I'll do it myself. I can't find what I'm looking for. I'll just make it.
Yeah, I love that as the mother of invention. Just like,
Yeah.
well, it doesn't exist. I want it to exist. Uh, it- so I think you're right. I think that area is really blowing up. You mentioned like going to shows. I want to get back. I, Will, it's going to be up to you to get back to the solo and the duo stuff. 'Cause I think it's a fascinating thing. I think we need to look at for mechanically in like the GM-less stuff. I want to talk about
Yeah.
that. Before I forget though, you said going to shows, and you mentioned going to cons.
hmm
How, for folks that are thinking about that do have a finished product, or even just want to play test stuff, how important is that for a process for you?
For me, I think it's incredibly important. I prefer to play test more privately. I don't want to do it at a con. I think it depends on who you are as a person, how you want to do that and what kind of feedback you're looking for. I prefer like a more private. I just get overstimulated in cons, so I wouldn't be able to do it well. But from a selling perspective, I find it to be kind of invaluable. I stand up when I sell, I stand up at my table, I say hi to every single person that walks by. I try to do a quick demo for them. Like I'll have a card deck out and I'll be like, let me show you how this works. It's super easy to get into, and basically show them how to play within 30 seconds. And they'll be like, wow, that's cool. And then they buy the game. So for me, it's very valuable because just letting it sit on a shelf, it's like obviously my cover art helps for some of my products, especially Carved by the Garden. I think people are really drawn to the cover art for that one. But Tangled Blessings, the cover art just isn't that good. It's not very compelling. It doesn't really explain what the product is. So being able to stand there and be like, hi, I'm a friendly person and I made this cool project and I think you're going to like it. Let me show you how to play really quickly. If you're not into it, you can walk away. And honestly, I'm super personable. So people, so that helps. I'm very warm. I'm very inviting. I have a friendly smile. So going to cons and making that personal connection, it really helps for me. I'm sorry. I know that
Why
can
be
really,
sorry?
it can, I mean, I'm trying to be like realistic without being like egotistical. Does that make sense? But
Don't,
so
as I say,
I'm sorry that like that's the truth of it is like at some point you have to be hospitable. Like if you want a piece, I also am putting success in quotations for podcast listeners here. If you want to be successful, however you define success, I define it as like good sales and good market penetration. Sorry for the corporate speak. I have to get up. I have to perform a little bit. I've got to like, put on a face and say, hello, welcome to my little stall. How can I help you?
yeah, and never apologize to us anyway for being awesome. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
just
We're
be awesome.
we're here to pick your brain on this stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're providing ample oodles of brain.
So that does mean, though, Will, since I'm in No Coast, Iowa, that's up to you to hit those shows. Like,
I'm in so much coast, Missouri. Technically, we have it's a weird little factoid. We have more miles of shoreline than California,
Oh yeah, that makes sense because of the Missouri River and the Mississippi
and the many lakes.
and the mini
Yeah,
lakes. Yeah,
yeah. You got to
we're
phrase it as
both in Missouri.
shoreline.
For those who don't know,
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Cassie's up in St. Louis. I'm down in Springfield. So
I'm so
that was
sorry.
well, our little niche
It's
is
okay.
pretty good. Is pretty
Okay.
good. I'm pretty excited, by the way, for this weekend. We're going to this museum, the art museum here in town. My wife is
Oh,
involved in this fundraising gala thing that they do every year, and they create kind of living art displays and stuff. Anyway, so
that's
yeah, you
cool.
you get into that crowd, and folks are pretty cool. Um, but yeah, why was I saying? Oh, Now I remember the fact that we're both from Missouri, and you had mentioned, I think I saw on Threads you saying something about St. Louis. That was what initially caught my eye in my kind of just scroll of
Right. Yeah.
whatever, searching the ttrpg hashtag, and I was like, wait a minute, that person's practically local to me. And then I start digging more and more, and I'm like, her stuff looks awesome, even better. So there we go.
It's nice to find other Missourians that are cool. It's a stressful state.
It is sometimes, and especially, well, we don't need to go down this road. I'll just say this time of
Probably.
year
Yeah,
is a lot for a lot of people.
it's a lot.
We were getting a lot of phone calls. So that means though that you would have some shows that you'd recommend for around the area.
Ooh,
But
yeah. Have you done Geek Way to the West? I
I
keep
haven't.
looking at it, and I've heard really good things.
I keep looking at it too. I've just heard it's very board game oriented. I might try it next year. I'm not sure yet. Or the year after. The nice thing is it's super local to me. And the
Yeah.
other nice thing is I can probably go once and then skip it a few years and then maybe go again because I'd probably be selling to the same people. So I have a feeling it's always going to be there. It survived the pandemic, so I'm not super like I got to get in this year or I got to get it next year. So I might continue to look at it, but I haven't
um,
committed at all.
I think, well, I think that's awesome. Just even talking about shows or even knowing what each other know about.
Hmm.
Good for you guys to have that in your area. Huh. Um, that I do want to bring this up though, because I want to get into this statement before I know we're shooting like maybe for 15 more minutes tops, ballpark, is that you're you're doing the solo stuff in the duos because you wanted to see more of it, basically, is kind of the emphasis of starting it.
Hmm.
There has to be, your stuff is very cozy horror. Like maybe,
Yes.
I don't want to say
Love that
rustic.
combo.
Is it like
Well, you would have
rustic Americana?
some of it, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
I mean, the art really reflects that part of it. What has drawn you to that? And is there something about doing it on your own that helps emphasize that, or what's the drawing point for you?
I think that's a really great question that I don't like have a succinct or intelligent answer for. So maybe write an essay and I'll read it and see if I agree. No, I think that's a piece of like who I am. I think I kind of embody cozy horror in the sense of I've experienced a lot of things in cozy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I have a timer going off. I'm so sorry. Let me back up. You can edit that out if you want to. I think I embody cozy horror because I've experienced a lot of cozy things and typically um, in spaces that many would consider horrifying. And I've experienced horrifying things in spaces many would consider cozy. So I just kind of explore that in my own work. And I want my players, those who play my games, to feel that unease and that discomfort. And so that's where it comes through a lot. And one of those is the sticker game, which is a audio only solo-ish role-playing game where you grab your sticker collection and then you basically have to save your own life with your stickers. That is like it's an absurdist piece and it is silly, but it's also got some deep pieces where you have to reflect on yourself and who you are, but you're also using stickers. So I really like playing with that space and making you confront scary things and what we deem as cozy in ways that are unique.
Is there a mechanic that you love to use to push that narrative on folks? Or maybe a favorite one, or one that you like to go back to over and over again?
It's not necessarily a mechanic as much as it is like a questioning style, and it's kind of hard to explain. But I like to pose questions, especially in my prompt driven games where you are told part of the story and the question is what is your reaction to this piece of the story, which is it's really hard to explain without an example, so I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Like if you're walking through the woods and a bird flies overhead, and you keep walking and you see the same bird every few seconds, you keep walking, then the question might be, how do you feel as you continue walking and you suddenly find the bird dead in front of you now that you've seen it, you know? So it's like, it's sort of like puts you in this really weird, intimate and immediate position. Because you're like, okay, it's asking me how I'm feeling. Oh my God. And then you're given a bit of information that like changes the whole scene that you were just given. So
One,
I really like to do that. It really messes with people when they play my games.
And I
one,
think that's really good for like a prompt based system to um, have something. You have to have something concrete, but also something open ended for somebody to journal about. And I think
Exactly.
that kind of jarring uh gear shift like that, basically you've set your scene and now you just cracked it wide open,
Exactly.
uh which is totally key to journaling games, I think.
And it's something I strive to do with every single prompt I write. And I've gotten some feedback that says you are too specific in your prompts. You have too much and people don't have enough to play with or enough to like do their own thing with. But I've also heard other feedback that is, I love how specific the prompts are. I love how detailed the world is and I love how immersed I am immediately. So I think that's another piece you as a designer have to figure out like which feedback do you want to listen to. I try to kind of go the middle route. Sometimes I skew a little bit more on the heavier side because I as a player I love all the details, and the more details there are, the more that I can like rip them up and put my own twist on them. So just some more insight, I guess.
will say from taking a look at some of your stuff is that I've done just a couple little journal ones, but they're like I'm a neophyte at it at best. And I rely a lot more on a die roll for the
Right.
conflict after setting up the prompt. What I liked about one of the things that you wrote, I think it was just even the thing that I downloaded that was the teaser for one of the games, was the idea and helped me think about it a little bit differently. The idea of using, not getting a definitive answer, using
Hmm.
the prompt to shape something that will lead to something else. And that helped me quite a bit. And I thought that was a very cool way. And I've read a handful of stuff already. For whatever reason, your game did that for me. So I just want to say thanks. That was
Oh,
cool.
you're welcome. I'm glad it was helpful.
Uh,
But I like die resolution systems too. If for those unfamiliar with my games, I use usually card resolution systems or like you just decide what happens kind of. But I also do love die resolution systems, and I do see myself exploring that in the future. I just don't have anything out yet that does. But I'm working on a system. I've been working on one for a few years.
Ooh,
So
a new system. Is
yeah.
that for a duo game or?
It started as a solo game. It probably could work as a duo game. It's my 2025 project. I should not
Okay.
be using the phrase 2025 project. It's my 2025 initiative.
Your next year project.
Yeah.
do what? Get off of
No.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like as I was saying, I was like, oh no, that will hurt SEO.
Is it something that we
Oh
want to
man.
that you want to talk about? So I just have one question that I have to ask near the end. It's very short. What's the thing you're thinking about? Or do you not even want to bring it up because that'll make
Yeah,
it too
I'm
real?
not quite at the let's talk about it stage. It's still in very, very early development. So I guess just keep an eye on me if you're interested, I guess. This is
Okay.
kind of where I'm at with it. Because it might be so bad, I'm like, I don't want to ever talk about it again. Didn't work out. We all make mistakes.
Sometimes you can bend those ideas and come back a decade
Yeah,
later and go, "Wait a minute.
yeah.
Here's what I needed to do."
And so with all of your social media website and everything, is all of it like Cassie Mothwin?
I think so. My Twitter X, whatever, is like contest Cassie because I didn't know who I want to be when I started that profile, and then I accidentally got too popular before I could change it. So everything
Accident.
else is Cassie Mothwin, though.
A good
Right
I
on.
problem to
used, I
have.
used to be a vampire, if you didn't know. So that's where the contest Cassie comes from. I literally was RPing a vampire on Twitter. I thought it was so funny and edgy.
I I did not realize
It's the deep
that.
lore.
That's an interesting. Were you playing like a Vampire the Masquerade
No,
game at
I
the
thought
time, or?
Strahd from D&D was just really cool, so
Oh,
I
I
was
mean,
Countess Strahd. That literally was what I was. Yep.
okay, I can admit Strahd's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just thought it was neat.
Was that your first touchstone for RPGs, D&D?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, my friend in high school ran something that he like built in his head, and we would sit in his family owned an antique store, and we would sit in his antique store after the store closed, and we'd roll die, and he would tell us if we could do something in his magical world that had Sonic, Naruto, and whomever, whatever Sailor Moon characters. So that we didn't have character sheets or anything. It was like that was technically it was a role playing game. It didn't have any real rules, but that was when I first like learned what it was, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then I tried D&D again later, and I was like, this is too many maths. Too many maths. Then 5e, it was, I don't know, it was a little bit easier to approach, but I'm not the biggest fan of 5e anymore. I won't get on that soapbox, but
Yeah, that is definitely something folks in our area have opinions on.
Is there like
For
is that the
sure.
other thing that we can't talk about?
Maybe these days, especially if we're talking about 2024 to rule out another year. Uh, but I know we're getting kind of down to the wire time wise for multiple reasons here. So maybe one last thing. I'm curious if there's anything we haven't hit on, a nugget of wisdom that's been percolating around in your brain while we've been going. And
that is, I have so many nuggets of wisdom. So it's
it
hard
was a
to
very
just,
general question,
it's hard to
just in
pick
case there
one.
was something that you're like, oh, I meant to mention this earlier.
Yeah, I think if you are interested in getting into tabletop RPGs, I think you need to decide early on like what your goals are. If your goal is to make money, that's totally fine. That's totally a valid goal to have. Don't be a grifter. Be chill, please. But that's totally fine goal to have. Just be aware that that comes. People who want to give you their money are going to have a different set of expectations than people who just want to play a game. And that's going to come with a different set of feedback. So be ready for the feedback that isn't helpful and that might crush your spirit. I think that was the hardest lesson that I had to learn especially when I was in playtesting phases, is like I took in, I think, 15 different pieces of feedback, and it was an anonymous survey. And some of the feedback was like essays of what was wrong. Like, I think someone wrote more about what was wrong with my game than there was text in the actual game. So, figuring out a
Wow.
way to understand, okay, well, what feedback do I value? If I integrate this feedback, does it still connect with the ethos of my game? And then also figuring out how to not be defensive. These are not things that you do overnight. These are not things that I'm even completely like still good at, right? But I think it's just being aware that those are complications you're going to run into, and not feeling ready and not hardening yourself to them, but like just preparing yourself a little bit. Like there's going to be feedback that's not going to be useful. How can I help this person give me feedback in a way that is going to be useful? So my biggest piece of advice, especially if you're playtesting, is have an actual survey. A lot of people will put a playtesting document together and send it to someone and say, go playtest this with your group, and then bring me feedback. If you don't have targeted questions, if you don't have specific, like, how did you feel about this specific rule? Was this piece confusing? How did you feel about the resolution? Did you run into issues? Where did you encounter friction? You might not get the feedback you need. You might not get the specific feedback at the targeted points you need. So have a survey.
The survey is a great point. I feel like if you don't have that, you're likely to get the kind of stereotypical parent reaction. You ask your kid, "Oh, what'd you do in school?" or "How was school?" or whatever, and they're just like, fine, great."
The last piece of advice I have for the survey is have a question that says, if you were to describe this game to a friend, how would you describe it? Because you're going to get so much insight on how your game is perceived. Plus, let me backtrack a little bit. So for Tangled Blessings, I did a playtest, and one of my playtesters said, I've never played a structured journaling game before, but I really like this. I had never, ever heard the phrase structured journaling. I Googled it, still had never seen it. That was just how this person described the experience. So I went on to use that everywhere. Like, this is a structured journaling game. And I feel like that describes it to people who have no idea what an RPG is so much better than this is a solo RPG. Structured journaling game, it immediately tells you what you're getting into. So that's honestly how I sell a lot of my games at conventions or places where folks don't know what RPGs are. I use that language. And then the other question I tell people to include is, like, if you were to give a quote for marketing, or like a positive piece that I might use in marketing, what would you say? And can I use it? Because now you've got quotes you can use right out of the gate. So those are the things, if you're playtesting, like, if you don't have those questions, you're missing out on some great opportunities.
We need to write this up to send to the guys we were playtesting with over the weekend, Jerod.
Got it.
Yeah, and I have an article on my blog somewhere that recaps all of this too, that I send out every once in a while. I repost it because I'm like, here's my playtesting blog that is helpful, I know, so go read it.
That's great. That is, I think, really, really strong advice for folks.
Especially new people who have no idea where to start with playtesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go on your website and take a look at your games, like in it, if you go through, I think every single one of your games has a quote from someone. I don't know enough people, so they could be very famous, and I have no idea. But there is very cool quotes for pretty much every game. I think that's cool.
Most of those are from playtesting phases.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so I've got my one last question that I wrote down. I'm sure you've gotten this question a ton, an absolute ton.
Hopefully I have a good answer then.
Well, I'm just going to keep it very casual because you've gotten so many other awesome stuff that's already happened. And thank you so much already.
You're fine.
So here's the question. Why would I not want to ask you for a restaurant recommendation?
Oh my God. Okay, so on my bio, on my website, I have do not ask me for restaurant recommendations. I am an introvert. I don't leave my house. I don't know what the good places are. I don't know. So many people come to St. Louis and they're like, where should we go to eat? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you like? And I'll Google and I'll tell you what I find on Google. The other thing is, so many restaurants opened and closed during the pandemic. Like, one of our big ones literally closed yesterday. This big, huge attraction that was a restaurant, a brewery, games, closed yesterday. So it's like, don't ask me. I'm like either upset about my favorite place closing, or I'm anticipating a new place opening and it's probably going to disappoint me. I'm so in between my love of restaurants. Actually, right now, though, I do have a restaurant recommendation. It's a Korean place. The issue is they always sell out of their food. So you'll still be upset with my recommendation because you'll go and they won't have anything to sell you.
You don't want to give them the Cassi bump?
Yeah.
I can't
That'll
remember.
really
It's
put them
like
over the top.
Cafe Genadaria in St. Louis. It's Genadaria or Genadaria. If you Google it, probably pops up. It's a very, very small Korean cafe. They have amazing yum chicken wings, and soup. I can't wait for it to get colder so I can just go and eat all their soup. And they're like I shouldn't give away the location. They're very close to me.
Probably not.
Well.
They're super far away.
Just St. Louis is
they're like way far away. So
yeah.
The other thing is that my favorite place to eat is at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. So it's hard to be like, my favorite restaurant is like actually a booth at the farmer's market for a very small amount of time on Saturday mornings.
Like, I'm not a burrito guy or a quesadilla guy, but there is a breakfast quesadilla at our local farmers market that these guys, the gals, I should say, Luna, they just kill it every Saturday, and it's totally worth going.
You guys are making me hungry, and it's I hate to admit I didn't eat before recording, so yeah, man. Now I'm weirdly enough not even craving a burrito or a quesadilla. Tamales. When I think
I
about
love tamales. That's what I get at the farmers market. I get tamales.
Yes, yeah. We've got a great place that does them down here too. There's a little Peruvian lady that does like Peruvian tamales.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness, and her empanadas.
Oh, I love empanadas.
I don't want to out anyone here, but my wife specifically said yesterday she does not get empanadas, and she's a cook, and I was beside myself.
You were right to be.
Oh my God.
I don't know what
Hey,
to say to that.
we'll have to write this question down for everyone. Like, that was fantastic.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's good.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was great to meet everybody and hang out. I haven't done an interview in a while, so it was also good to get back at it, I guess.
Well, good. We're happy you came on and happy to help spread a little bit of word for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for knowing my work and reaching out. I really appreciate it. It's like I said, it's been a good time.
Good. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening or watching if you were doing that. We're going to call it a day.
Woo!
Bye.
Thank you.